Samanta Chakravalesu Atra Gachantu Devatha Sadhammang Muni Rajas Sunantu Sangha Mokkadang Dhammasavana Kalu Ayang Bhadanta Dhammasavana Kalu Ayang Bhadanta Dhammasavana Kalu Ayang Bhadanta Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
It has to be within the scope of the five senses, and the thing has to be repeated. The process should be repeated, can be repeated. And if the facts prove something other than what has been mentioned, the theory can be disproved even. And this is very something utterly subjective. So therefore, it's a concept that cannot be proven objectively and shown that there is such a law and so forth. First of all, I would prepare. Okay, there's a time. Okay. But in Buddhism, the topic karma plays a pivotal role, because if it is not for karma, the rebirth would not have happened. Every birth is preceded by a karma. If someone is born in a certain realm, the obvious question one has to ask is, what is the karma that gave the rebirth? If we are talking about a rebirth or a birth without a karma, then we are moving into a non-causal doctrine, which is utterly against the Buddha's doctrine. So as we are here to listen how the Buddha would explain, how the Theravada tradition would explain the reincarnation and the karma, we lay the foundation that every birth is preceded by a karma, and every birth is a production of a karma, another way to say. Then what is a birth? What is a life? What are the constitutes of a life? According to the teachings, it's a constitution of two main elements, which is to say nama and rupa. Nama and rupa. In Sinhalese pronunciation, we call nama rupa. In English, international Pali, we call it nama and rupa. Okay. Because the A is not closed, it's open. So I'll be reciting or uttering Pali in the international pronunciation. So at the end of every word, even though I'm supposed to say Buddha, I might say Buddha, right? So please keep that in mind, that it is the international pronunciation. So when I give an English talk, I normally go into that pronunciation. So instead of saying Namo Tassa, I would rather say Namo Tassa. It's not distorting the language, because it's only in Sri Lanka that we utter Namo Tassa. In every other Buddhist country, you have to say it's Namo Tassa, right? Because that's a dialectal issue. Anyway, so what is the constituents of a life? Life is a combination of two elements, that is to say mind and matter. In other words, nama and rupa. This nama rupa in a certain life is produced by a karma. A karma. That karma decides whether one is born in a blissful realm or a woeful realm. So this leads to another fundamental. According to the Buddha's teachings, realms we are born into are clearly distinguished as good and bad. There are no intermediate realms which can be called which can give births with both either good or bad karmas. This is another fundamental that we have to keep in mind. Normally, that's how it happens in the physical world. If some of you have studied quantum physics, they would say electrons remain in certain energy levels. They are not mostly found in between. They jump from one level to another. So likewise, according to the Buddhist cosmology, there are only 31 realms maximum in a one given world cycle. Among these 31, 4 are considered woeful, that's called apaya. And the remaining are considered blissful, sugati. Sugati and dugati. Dugati are the bad ones. Sugati are the good ones. Nama Rupa are produced, initially produced in a certain realm by a karma. And if they are produced in a bad realm, the cause has to be a bad karma. And if it is a good realm, the cause has to be a good karma. It's a very basic teaching. I think all of us know about it. But we sometimes overlook this basic concept, and certain teachings that we utter may violate this. So these fundamentals are very important while we are explaining deep Buddhist philosophical teachings. Every birth is a production of a karma. We cannot negate this. And it will lead to a certain realm. And those realms are divided black and white, either as good or bad. Then the next point. Karma produces mind and matter. Mind and matter in a certain life. Not all mind and matter is produced by karma. The initial mind and matter is produced by karma. That's called the birth, rebirth moment. Before we scrutinize this very deep phenomenon, we have to find out the fundamentals. The initial mind and matter in a certain life is produced by a certain karma. According to the Theravada fundamentals, another aspect is the consciousness of a being has 2 different aspects. The initial fundamental consciousness and the remaining consciousnesses. I may use the plural word, though it is not an English word. Normally Buddhist scholars have adapted this. Consciousness is always a singular word, noun. But certain Buddhist scholars have used it as a plural noun because in Buddhism we talk multiple consciousnesses. So we have in every life we have a fundamental consciousness and other consciousnesses. But according to Theravada teachings, 2 consciousnesses can never appear at the same time. It's a very basic concept. There was a Buddhist school in ancient days, immediately after the Buddha's passing away. By the time when the Emperor Asoka ascended the throne, a school called Eka-Vyavaharika and another school emerged as Lokuttaravadins and another Kaukotika. These 3 schools wiped out from the Buddhist spectrum very soon. They held on to the view that 2 consciousnesses could exist at the same time. One is the pure one, the other one is the defiled one. Because there are teachings the Buddha has said, the consciousness in its initial stage is pure and it becomes defiled afterwards. That's how they interpreted this. According to Theravada teachings, no, that's not the case. two consciousnesses cannot exist at the same time. If you look into it objectively, it may lead to another confusion as well. Because with consciousness, we get the self-view. We get the understanding that subjective experience is the consciousness, is done by the consciousness itself. So there can be a dilemma. Which consciousness would think it's me, it's I? Which subjective experience should we prioritize? So therefore, according to most of the Buddhist schools, one consciousness at a time. So then we are talking about a lineage of consciousnesses that are appearing in a sequence. So the fundamental consciousness appears all the time whenever there is no special other consciousness. The other consciousnesses are as if emerging from the fundamental consciousness. But while the other consciousnesses are present, the fundamental consciousness doesn't exist. Temporarily, its lineage is ceased. But as soon as the other consciousnesses, which we call the functional consciousnesses, with which we listen, hear, see, taste, do all the activities, when these functional consciousnesses stop, immediately the fundamental consciousness arises. And then again, whenever an object comes, other consciousnesses come into the play. This is the fundamental, very important one. All the fundamental consciousnesses in one life of a certain being is produced by one single karma. One single karma. It can either be a good karma if it is birth is happening in a good has happened in a good realm. If it is a bad karma, it's a bad karma if the birth has happened in a bad realm. So the fundamental consciousness is what arises while we are sleeping, while any other consciousness is not there. And this is the life stream which maintains our life. In Pali, in Theravada Abhidharma, we call it Bhavanga Chitta. Bhavanga Chitta. Now what happens is, this leads to another very basic fundamental. If all the fundamental consciousnesses in one life are produced by a single karma, that karma has a certain capacity to do so. And it's very obvious to us through our first-hand experience that the karma is an impermanent action. Karma means the action, right? Anything that we do is a non-material action that we perform by which we do verbal, physical, mental activities. Whatever action we do, we start it, we finishes it. It has a beginning, middle and an end. We do one karma, we listen to a Dhamma talk, we accumulate a good karma and that's done. We do another karma. We do another worshipping, another offering. If someone is killing animals, kills one animal, kills another animal, he's accumulating new karma. One karma is impermanent. And we know that it is possible that we can upgrade the quality of a karma next time when we do it, when we repeat it. And this shows that this impermanent karma has the capacity to produce nama rupa. It has the capacity to produce the fundamental consciousnesses. And it's it leaves behind a certain energy, which we call the Kamma Sati. The capacity of the karma. Though the karma vanishes, it leaves the capacity. And capacity is within us. This capacity has to be limited. Why? The karma is impermanent. It's a limited action. So what happens? Its capacity to produce the fundamental consciousnesses in one life has to end one day. It's a must. So Buddha gave the discourse saying, if anyone is born with a karma, and if the karma is impermanent, it should have a limited capacity. A limited capacitated karma cannot produce an unlimited infinite life. So he was certain anyone who is born has to die. Natti jatas amaranang. So therefore, for example, if I bring you a hypothetical insight, if one life, fundamental consciousnesses of one life can be produced by various karmas, imagine, given the length of the samsara, given that there's no beginning in samsara, if someone finds out the possibility or the mechanism to bring forth past karmas to produce new fundamental consciousnesses in one life, there is at least a possibility of an infinite life. Because when a certain karma's capacity finishes, you can bring another karma and extend your life. And Buddha was certain that it is not possible at all. Not possible at all. A permanent, infinite life is not possible. Why is that? As the Theravadians explain, that's because all the fundamental consciousnesses in one life, which is the life stream of a life, of that life is produced by a single karma, and the single karma is impermanent, which can be observed through our senses. The Bodhisattva was convinced even before his enlightenment. He said to Uddaka Ramaputta and Alara Kalama, if you are talking about a permanent life due to this jhana, I'm not convinced. Because I can see this jhana is impermanent. An impermanent jhana producing an infinite life and a permanent liberation, I would not accept that. If the cause is impermanent, I cannot accept the fact that the result would be infinite. If the cause is impermanent, result cannot be permanent. This is the foundation. So this doctrine of karma elaborates why every life is impermanent. Why every life must end. It doesn't say that why every life could end at any time. No, it must end one day. Now this karma has the capacity to produce nama and rupa, and it produces the fundamental consciousness again and again, but there are other consciousnesses as well. So this shows the presence of other consciousnesses shows that not everything in one life is determined by the karma. No. We have a free will and we can do certain activities and we can change the course of life. Because there are other consciousnesses that are not completely under the influence of karma. But the fundamental consciousness that we are having in a certain life restricts our capacities. That's why, because other consciousnesses by which we do our activities are coming forth, as if coming forth from that fundamental consciousness. That is why, according to the teachings, a being who is born in a woeful realm can never attain jhanas in that very life. For example, if I say I'm going to run Paris Olympics this year, 100 meters. Say, come on, Bhante, how can you run? It's sure that your body doesn't suit to run the 100 meters less than 10 seconds. It's obvious, right? Because my muscles are not ready for that. It cannot have that performance. Basically, fundamentally, they are not that strong. They are not being trained. So likewise, all the other consciousnesses that are arising from the fundamental consciousness are highly influenced by the fundamental consciousness. Not fully determined, highly influenced. If the fundamental consciousness is weak or is produced by a bad akusala karma, that consciousness cannot support for other consciousnesses of spiritual growth. That's why it's very vital that one is born in a blissful realm in order to attain spiritual progress. Now karma plays a pivotal role according to these teachings. Then comes, I'm going into some deep aspects of Theravada teachings which we normally don't discuss. What is this karma? Teachings are very clear. Chetanaham bhikkave kammang vadami. It's the chetana itself is the karma. What is chetana? Chetana is the volition, intention. In another word, the force of the mind to do a certain action. Another translation would be effort. That is different from virya. Virya is the energy that helps your mind to continue a task that you have initiated. Without energy, whatever task we initiated, we cannot take it till the end. Chetana is the intention to do a certain activity. If I happen to kill an animal and come to the Buddha and ask whether I accumulated a karma or not, he would ask the question, what was your intention? Did you intend to kill the animal or not? That intention itself is a force. It regulates the entire mind at that moment, and it also influences the body. A simile is given in books. If an engine is working with air, a steam engine, for instance, every part of the machine is working, but the main force is the air itself. So likewise, when we are working with our body and the mind, verbally, physically, or mentally, the force that makes all the body parts, verbal activities, mental parts to function, that force is the chetana, like the air in a steam engine. That is the real force of the mind. And that also has an intention to do. Then we leads to another topic called ethics, which I'm not going to touch upon. Now this energy accomplishes certain tasks. For instance, if I want to drink this water, I have intention. With my intention, my body moves, my arm stretches, I lift it, and it drinks it. If I want to offer something to a monk, I take my cup. If this was given to me, I offer to him the water and dedicate it to him. I had the intention of giving it instead of using for myself. Now there is a creature here. I had the intention to kill it. I lift my hand and crush it. So all my bodily activities were initiated or regulated or done by this force, intention. That is the chetana. It's a mental activity. It's a mental force. It's a non-material thing. This non-material thing has the capacity to move the matter. I know it violates the modern physics. Just leave it behind. If you want free will, there's no other way than being a dualist. Right? No other way. So you lift the hand and you crush it. Lift the hand and offer it. So Chetana has the power to move the body. And Chetana accomplishes the tasks that we have done. And what was behind this Chetana? That's the desire to do so. I had a desire to offer the food I had desire to kill the animal, right? And Chetana accomplishes this desire. It doesn't need to be based on craving, but I had a wish to do something. I wanted to offer this to someone. I wanted to kill the animal. And Chetana accomplishes this desire. So that is the desire that was present in our mind, and it was accomplished by the Chetana. At the same time, please note that even we are being not aware of it, there's another desire constantly present in us. That is the desire to live. That desire is something inherited in us, is latently present. It's sort of a disposition. Buddha has termed this anusaya, the latent defilement, latent craving to live. And this latent craving is present in us even while we are doing a wholesome deed. That's why even though we are listening to this Dhamma talk, if a sudden earthquake happens, most of us would be running out, right? Suddenly everything changes. Why was that? It was present in us. There's no wholesome latent disposition according to Buddhism. It's only unwholesome latent dispositions. One of the most fundamental are the craving to live, desire to live. And that's because of ignorance. We call bhavatanha, desire to continue to live. Sometimes you have kama-tanha. It's present in us. I'll give you a simile for this. Think about a country which is ruled by terrorists. Okay, name it for yourself. And think about the people in this country. We feel very pity about them. Oh, they are in constant fear. They cannot enjoy themselves. They cannot see a future for their children. We know we never wish to be in such a country while enjoying the democracy in a country like this. But if you analyze it deeply, if you scrutinize their lives, is it that they are always living with constant fear? Don't they have any enjoyment in their lives? Don't they enjoy with their children? Don't they have parties? Don't they laugh with each other? Yes, they do. They do have good times. But in the overall sense, for example, they may have a party in a house, but suddenly if they hear a knock at the door, everything vanishes. All the happiness goes away. If the knock is too hard, the constant thought is maybe the military has come and something is going out wrong. And we consider this as a constant fear. Even though they are in happy states time to time, we name it. They're in constant fear. What is this constantness? Whenever the conditions come, fear arises. Whenever the things change, instantly fear arises. Whenever they hear a bomb sound, fear arises. But they do have good moments. But they have been haunted by the fear constantly. What is this fear? Now, replace this person with ourselves. We are in good conditions. Yes, we are enjoying freedom, liberty. Maybe you have certain opinions, okay. But in overall sense, we are better than them. Obviously, we are in a better position, better situation. Even I myself from Sri Lanka in a better situation than them, okay. right? But what does it take for us to change our moods? A sudden earthquake. Imagine a gunman enters the room, everything changes. All the dynamics change. If a vehicle is suddenly coming towards us, everything changes. How would you think Arahant would look at us? Oh, they are in good status, but for the people in the terrorist-ruled country, it's just a knock at the door, a bomb sound. Suddenly, everything changes. But for us, yes, it takes more causes. But still, if someone points a gun at us, everything changes. Earth shakes, everything changes. We suddenly get a call. Robbers have entered the house. Everything changes. So we term them as in constant fear. How would Arahant would term us? Yes, they are in good condition. Like, yes, those people also had parties. Arahant would say, yes, they are in constant fear. It just takes a short moment. The dynamics changes and they completely lose their peace. What is this? We too are in constant fear. That's why Buddha said. He said this in Dhammapada. Tasinaya purakkata paja parisappanti sasova bhadito. The people who are led by craving to live. Tasinaya purakkata paja, the humans led by craving. Parisappanti sasova bhadito. They are in constant fear like a rabbit who is captured in a trap. Rabbits are very panicked, right? They even faint if they become afraid. Maybe you have seen them. They are very sensitive beings. They're very afraid of their enemies. So likewise, Buddha termed beings who have not eradicated the greed to live are in constant fear. Why is that? Even while we are doing good deeds, this fear could come at any time because we have a constant craving to live. That craving is present in us. That is the latent disposition to live, which we call anusaya. Keep that in mind. According to teachings, we have it within us in a latent level. That is the latent craving that is eradicated at the moment of liberation. At the moment of liberation, the mind is very pure, which we call the Magga Chitta. But it does eradicate defilements. What kind of defilements does it eradicate? This question is asked in books. Not the past defilement, not the present. No, Magga Chitta cannot have defilements with it. It cannot be a future defilement. It is the latent disposition, latent defilements that are present in us. And this craving is constantly there. What is craving? Craving to live. Now I'm coming back to the Chetana. We diverged to that topic from the place. I have a desire to do an act. So I lifted this and offered. I had a desire, so I killed. So Chetana accomplished this act which I desired. It may or may not accomplish entirely. But my body and mind worked according to that desire, and Chetana was the doer. It accomplishes the desire's wish. While we are doing all these deeds, there is a constant desire present as latent. And that constant desire is willing for lives. Life is nama and rupa. Lives are combinations of mind and matter. In the end, it has desired for mind and matter. So when the Chetana is accomplishing the task on the surface, this same force will be dedicated to accomplish the desire of the latent wish to live. Our desire to live can never be satisfied. How much we see objects with our eyes, even 30, 40, 50 years, will never be satisfied. We'll never feel, okay, it's enough. No. Even though we have seen the same object for 50 years, we will not feel it's enough, I have seen. Same way, we don't feel enough living. Sometimes people, when they get old, they will feel it's enough living. Enough, we have lived. Even a person who is going to suicide, a suddenly car comes into his body, he will shake and run away, right? Jump suddenly. Sudden reaction is to save the life. So, latently, the desire to live is there. Desire to live is to have Nama and Rupa continuously. So, my first level desire to do an activity, to offer this thing was accomplished by the Chetana. To kill the animal was accomplished by the Chetana. The latent desire to have Nama Rupa more and more, who is going to accomplish this task? Who is going to fulfill this task? My upper level desires were fulfilled by Chetana. Who is going to fulfill this desire? It's the same Chetana that will be dedicated to fulfill this desire. So what happens according to the teachings? When the Chetana is done to accomplish a certain action, a certain energy would remain from it in the mind stream. That energy is responsible in doing what? When the fundamental consciousnesses of this life is ending, because the karma is finishing, the karma which gave the birth expires. One of such energies which are left over, according to the desire to live, would come forward and give another rebirth. And the same mental energy, the Chetana, I'll repeat this again, by which we accomplish mental, verbal, physical activities in the surface, will be dedicated to produce Nama Rupa in the future due to the influence of the latent desire. When that desire is gone, there's no such influence. No energy remains. That's why an Arahant doesn't accumulate karmas for the future. And why that Chetana is producing only mind and matter? Why doesn't it produce a rock or a tree or anything else? Because it's under the influence of craving. Craving needs mind and matter. So it produces mind and matter. Craving is like the king or the president. Karma is like the minister. Minister, when he does the work, he has to do it within the realm of the king or the president. Otherwise, he'll be fired, right? So that's why, according to teachings, karma produces Nama and Rupa. So then the question comes, when the fundamental consciousness is going to stop because the karma is expired, it may stop due to other reasons as well. But imagine if someone lives the entire lifespan, the karma is going to finish now. And it has to stop. But the craving is still there. We want to live. He doesn't want to give up. The stored energies of karma are there. There are good karmas, bad karmas. There are good realms and bad realms. We cannot be born in all the realms at the same time. one of the karmas has to get the priority. Very basic things. Why does a karma gets the priority or gets the opportunity? Because of the desire to continue, desire to go, to live. If such desire is not there, when the such desire is there, one of the karmas get the opportunity and it will give the next birth. That karma will either present itself to the mind, it will present any of the objects related to it to the mind, or either it will present the future life which it is going to take us, where it is going to take us. It's like a new ruler. The real ruler, the deep state is the craving. The new karma is going to produce the new life. That new elected ruler. Still the past life is continuing. It's about to pass away. It's like a president-elect. He's about to get elected. So when a president is going to get elected, what does it show? It shows himself, his qualities, anyone who is related to him. Oh, where I'm going to take this country towards. So he shows, I'm going to take you to this life. It gives the signs of the future life. Either it presents itself, either it will present something related to that life. Karma, karma nimitta, or gati nimitta. It presents to the mind at the moment of death. Mind clings to that object at that time. A mind is like a person who is drowning. A drowning person would drag on to anything that is there. So the karma presents itself. It normally clings to the object that is presented to the mind. These have been explained in the books. So what happens? That karma which got the opportunity will produces the next life. Nama and Rupa. And that life continues. If the craving is not present, even though there is a lot of karma done in the past, person who doesn't have craving is an arahant. The craving is not present, even though there's a lot of karma done in the past, those karmas will not get the opportunity to give a next birth. So that will be the last birth. So therefore, please keep it in mind. Craving plays the biggest role in the functioning of the karma. The final topic. What is the influence or the function of ignorance here? Avijja. Craving is liking the nama and rupa, mind and matter. Why do we like this mind and matter? Is it something to be liked, or is it really something to be attached? Does it deserve this craving? Is it something worthy liking? Nama and rupa are impermanent. They lead to suffering. They are non-self. Constantly rising and falling leads to a lot of suffering, and there's no self at all. If you understand this ultimate truth, we cannot have craving towards anything at all. If we, for example, if we can penetrate into the bodies, there would be less marriages, right? So if you see the truth, if you understand the reality, if you understand it deeply, craving cannot exist within us. So craving exists because of ignorance. And karma can play its role. Finally, there is a linkage between ignorance and craving as well. That's the final topic. Now I explain how craving is related to karma. How karma produces nama and rupa under the influence of craving. Karma is the chetana, it is a force to do the activities. While it accomplishes the desires in the upper surface, there is a craving for nama and rupa to live. And this force, a part of this force, a certain energy is dedicated to that craving, and that stored karma would produce nama and rupa under the influence of the craving, and it gets the opportunity at the moment of death. And it produces nama and rupa because it's under the influence of craving. And craving exists within us because of the ignorance, because we are not enlightened, fully enlightened. So it shows ignorance to karma. Ignorance supports craving, and craving supports karma. There's another loop. Ignorance to karma. Where do you find this in the doctrine? Because whatever I said, I have to match it with the doctrine, right? Upadana paccaya bhavo. Upadana, there is craving. There's another element called wrong view, which I'm not going to bring into the topic because it will extend the topic. It'll be really interesting, but it complicates things. The craving and karma are very much related. Where do we find ignorance and karma? Avidya paccaya sankhara. Sankhara are the karmas. Ignorance causes karma. How do we explain this? Link between ignorance and craving is very clear. What is the link between ignorance and karma? Karma is a force. It accomplishes the tasks desired by this desire on the surface of the mind. And a part of it is dedicated to accomplish the desires in the latent level. So we term it as an extra force is there. Atireka vega. That's how it is termed in Pali books. Extra force. And that extra force will remain. And who gives this extra force? Who gives this extra force into the karma? Connection is ignorance. I'll give you a simile for that. Think about a person who had a very bad experience in childhood. For instance, abuse, for example. The person, even they grow up, sometimes such people have negative feelings towards similar ones who are responsible to the abuse, for example. Sometimes when they meet such people or come into a similar environment, they feel very uncomfortable. Right? Sometimes they are not even aware of what is going on them. Ones who are around will feel, oh, something is wrong. Why do you feel anxious when you meet someone? Is something wrong with you? Sometimes when we are not in a good status, mind is in a good status, our colleagues would understand the way we work. When they see the way we work, they would ask, are you okay today? Is there anything wrong? The way we take the cup, way we write. If we had a quarrel in the house with the wife before we came to work, yes, things are different in the working place, right? Because it affects our activities. It affects our mind, our chetana. We can see. So what a psychologist or a psychiatric would do, mostly they would go for counseling, right? They would talk with them, discuss with them. They would remove the fear. How do they remove the fear? Enlighten the person and say, no, not even though abuse is wrong, but you don't need to have enmity towards every man because of that. You should not understand that not every person is an abuser. That's a past thing. You should not carry it to the future. So they enlighten. They give you wisdom. So there was an ignorance that the person couldn't deal with the object because of the ignorance. So even the person not being aware of that, he was acting weirdly to the object, toward the situation. Weird from the normal situation. than other people. So we could understand there's something wrong here. There's something extra effort here. Something weird here. Why is that? Because of the ignorance. He was not free from that ignorance. That influences the person's mind, his actions. Now think about ourselves. We are in a constant ignorance about ourselves. We hold, this is I. This is mine. This is my body. This is my family. All this. Because we haven't had the full insight. So what happens? Even though we are doing something good, our activities are constantly affected by this ignorance, like a person who had a bad experience in childhood. We would note it. Our distracted nature would be obvious to whom? To an arahant who doesn't have the ignorance. For him or her, it is very obvious. All the activities this person is doing, even though they are wholesome, are affected by the ignorance. You cannot prevent that. Because of that, the Chetana that would have a certain energy level, because of this ignorance, has an extra energy level. That energy, when it is dedicated to perform the upper tasks, that extra energy remains in the mind, dedicated to accomplish the desire of the latent level. If that ignorance is removed, the Chetana doesn't get that extra energy. It becomes calmer than another person. So in books it is mentioned, the mind of an arahant, by its nature, is calm. Because it's not being influenced by this latent ignorance and latent craving. So the actions of an arahant Chetana of an arahant doesn't go into that extra energy level, and it doesn't leave behind any energy force for the future. So he doesn't accumulate any karma. That's the linkage between ignorance and karma. So I have talked one of the deepest philosophical things that are mentioned in Theravada doctrine. Everything I have mentioned is referred to the Theravada. Nothing is mentioned from my own intuition. No. All have references. So if it makes sense, if it is logical, that's up to the audience to accept or not. You can ask questions, obviously. So this is how the karma and reincarnation can be explained in a deeper level in Theravada teachings. So what would be the final outcome? What is the final aim in Buddhism? A rebirth means a production of nama and rupa. Since karma is impermanent, every life has to end. As long as karma is present, rebirth is inevitable. And this has to keep on going. Buddha said, what is the purpose? And if there is no self, what is the purpose at all? So then, what we are supposed to do is to prevent the karma giving a rebirth. Mechanically, that's what we have to do. If karma is giving the rebirth, stop it. So some ancient teachers said, destroy the karma. In order to destroy the karma, torment your body. Self-mortification. Buddha said, no. If you want to destroy something, mental thing, you have to bring the utterly opposite nature. There's nothing fully opposite of karma. One can bring the argument. But isn't it that wholesome is opposite of unwholesome? Yes. Wholesome is opposite to unwholesome. Then what is opposite of wholesome? Unwholesome. So does it mean that you have to do unwholesome to stop the wholesome? No. Wholesome and unwholesome are two divisions within the karma. Both wholesome and unwholesome leads to a rebirth. So if you want to stop the rebirth, you have to stop both. Then in order to stop wholesome, you have to do unwholesome. To prevent unwholesome, you have to do wholesome. It doesn't make any sense. This is not to say not to do wholesome, because unless you are not born in a good realm, you will not be able to do this. So you have to do wholesome. But still you have to prevent the karma from giving a rebirth. So how to prevent it? You cannot destroy it, because there is no nature that is utterly opposite of chetana, force. So Buddha said, no, not self-mortification. Then what? Destroy the craving. Yes, if we destroy the craving, karma would not get the opportunity and new karma would not be accumulated. Yes, that's a good point. Destroy the craving. If you destroy the craving, no birth would happen. That's what he mentioned in the Dhammacakka Sutta. Still, there's a slight problem. Can you destroy craving while there is ignorance present? Because craving strives from ignorance. The cause of craving is ignorance. Yes. And craving cannot be destroyed alone. There's a cause for craving, ignorance. Then how about destroying ignorance? Yes, perfectly okay. If you destroy ignorance, no space for craving, no ignorance and craving, no new karma, and past karma cannot give a rebirth. So he shown the path against ignorance, vipassana. Avidya is ignorance. He showed vidya, understanding, wisdom. The problem is how to come to that wisdom. You cannot just buy it from a shop. Something has to be developed here. Because if craving is here, if ignorance is here, you have to destroy it here. It's not a fight outside, it's a fight, internal fight. Bring it here. In order to bring it here, obviously you have to have some concentration. You cannot do it with a distracted mind, because you have to understand the true natures of Nama and Rupa. Because ignorance is about Nama and Rupa. Understand the true natures, and so you have to have concentration. You have to have concentration to some level. A distracted person would never be able to do that. To gain concentration, first, you have to restrain from bad behavior. Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. So he taught the doctrine of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. When the Panya comes to its culmination, that's the time Vidya will be destroyed. Avidya will be destroyed, When avidya is no more, at the same time, craving will be destroyed. New karma will not be accumulated. Navang natti sambhavang. Past karma will be there. You cannot destroy the karma. That's why Arahant would still experience Kamma-Vipaka. There's no way you can destroy the karma. Only ways you can prevent the karma from giving a new rebirth. And that's called destroying the past karma. Khinam Purana. According to Theravada, destroying the past karma means not giving it the opportunity to make a rebirth. And that would be the end of suffering. Because, to conclude, as long as craving, ignorance and karma is present, at this moment, even though I am not dead, Nama-rupas of my next life is about to arise. It's just a matter of time that I die. If I die now, I am not an Arahant, obviously. If I die suddenly, rebirth would happen because causes are here. When the causes are here, the effect which has not arisen yet should be considered as arisen. Should not be neglecting it. Should not be neglecting it. Give you a simile. Okay, this will extend a few minutes again. An asteroid is coming towards the Pacific Ocean. No, we are facing the Southern Ocean, right? Yeah, okay, Southern Ocean. NASA is saying, okay, it's going to fall at that point, and such a huge tsunami is going to come and it's going to the Melbourne coast. Going to come to the Melbourne coast. It's going to fall in 7 days. And you can see the photos coming, it's coming, and NASA says, very sorry, we don't have the equipments to destroy it. So what will be the option? Australian government, the Victorian government, evacuate, evacuate. There's a very bold person comes and, oh, don't worry about the future. Live in the present moment. Don't worry about the future. Future has not come yet. It may happen or may not happen. Would you follow his advice? Obviously not. What is the reason? Because it's clear to you in the screen. NASA is showing NASA is reliable. Obviously you have to take NASA as reliable, right? Okay, that leads to a different discussion. Okay, anyway, take it as reliable, okay? It's coming. Because we know that much of an asteroid falling into the sea is just a matter of time. It's obvious the tsunami is going to come. We are evacuating. We are afraid of what? The cause is there, effect has not come yet. We are dealing with the effect that has not arisen yet. Why we take it seriously? Because the cause is there. Cause is present. Even though the effect has not arisen, come up yet, as long as the cause is there, we cannot neglect it. So now take it, my example. My causes are here, even though I'm not dead. It's just a matter of time. The next Nama Rupa is going to happen. Hopefully in a good realm. In a divine realm, maybe. Okay. Right. So, and it can lead to a woeful realm. Countless rebirths are waiting for me as long as the causes are here. I cannot just ignore that. And one would say this suffering is for the one who thinks. Now take the same example of the asteroid. The asteroid is coming. It's going to hit the Southern Sea. A group of young men and women have decided to go on the top of a Melbourne building and cut all the communication. Have decided we will enjoy without any connection for 1 month. No one can contact us, and they're fully enjoying. They're not aware of what is happening. They're not aware of what is going on. Fully enjoying. They're not in the distress as we do. How do you think about them? Do you think, oh, I missed the party, I would have been there? Oh, what a pity. Is that tsunami not going to kill them? Surely. It's going to harm them. They be not aware of the fact. Doesn't matter there. It's an objective reality. If it is really going to come, the person's ignorance of non-awareness is not going to free them from the suffering. We would never feel, oh, if I was there, because now we are evacuating the houses. Children are shouting, they're asking why we are going. It's full of distress. We have to take out all the computers and everything, the house money and all. It's a big job. Those people have no idea. They're just enjoying the time. How would you feel? It would have been nice if I was there because none of the stress would be there. No, we don't think like that. You would feel, is there a way to inform them? To take them out of this suffering that is going to befall them very soon? So whether if the result is really going to happen, if the causes are present, whether we think about it or not, we are bound with the suffering. They are bound with the suffering. They are bound with the tsunami. So Buddha said, whether you like or not, whether we contemplate or not, if the karma, phenomenon of karma is true, any person who has not eradicated the defilements are bound with the suffering. That is the suffering to come. Anupanna dukkha, unarisen suffering. Suffering that has not arisen. I may use a term, I may construct a term, unarisen. It's not an English word actually. Okay. I may use this word. Otherwise I have to say suffering that has not arisen. Okay. I beg your pardon. Okay. Dormant. Okay. Dormant suffering. The suffering that is going, has not arisen. Okay. Dormant. Which you are bound with. Okay. Let me use the unarisen word. Okay. Okay. Unarisen suffering. Because the Pali word is anupanna, dukkha. Uppanna is arisen. Anupanna, not arisen. So what is more? The suffering we experience in this life, the defilements that we in our mind, or the suffering of countless births that are going to come. In the Nakasika Sutta, Buddha said the Sotapanna is free from the suffering that he got freed from is compared to the soil on the earth, and the suffering left for him is like the soil on his nail tip. What is the suffering he got freed from? Suffering that was waiting for him beyond the 7 lives in the Kama realm. So this unarisen suffering, the dormant suffering, is the most deep and serious suffering that we are facing. How to get rid of that? Remove the causes. Remove the causes. Remove ignorance. It will remove craving. It will stop karma. And we'll be free from that dormant suffering or unarisen suffering. On that moment that you remove the ignorance. Why? Go back to the simile. Go back to the simile. The asteroid is coming. Okay, somehow Australian scientists invented a new missile. Okay. It was going to fall on 7th of November. And from Australia, they sent a missile on 3rd of November and destroyed the asteroid. And it was going to fall on 7th of November. It was destroyed on 3rd of November. You got freed from the tsunami. Okay. Surely you are going to celebrate it next year, right? Day of liberation from tsunami or whatever. And it's good for many companies also, right? Right? What is the day you are going to choose? 7th of November or 3rd of November? It was going to fall on 7th. It was destroyed on 3rd. 7th or 3rd? 3rd. That's the day we got the liberation. The cause was removed. That's the moment we got freed from the effect. Tsunami. So when does an arahant attains the liberation? The real liberation. Is it at his death or at the moment he removes the defilements? The moment he removes the desire defilements, that's the moment he is free from the unarisen. A Sotapanna becomes free from the immense of suffering the moment he attains this liberation. So Nibbana is something that you attain in this very life. Yes, for Arahant there is something left till he die that will be finished at the moment of death. There is also some kind of a end of suffering there because something was left to use the body. His physical pain was there. Even though he's not attached to that, some kind of distress was there. The physical problems were there. But the real now, the liberation from the suffering to come was attained the moment he attained. And that liberation is called nirvana. That's the liberation from suffering. And that has been a state that is existing forever, already existing. Conclude the talk. I've been saying this a few times now. Anyway, so Buddha has said there are two states only. He said, I only say two states. Dukkhancheva panyapemi. Dukkhasacha nirodhang. In Alagadupama Sutta. Dukkha, dukkha nirodha. There's no third state. He's referring to the beings, living beings. Now consider this. This is the suffering that we encountered in the past lives. This is the present life suffering. This is the suffering to come, and this extends. This is the freedom of suffering, absence of suffering. Only two states were there. When one eradicates all the defilements, the suffering to come would vanish. So what is left? The freedom from suffering. And that freedom of suffering has been existing. A simile. Think a motor is constantly working. Tuck, 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 tuck. You stop the motor. Every sound arises, vanishes at the moment, right? Tuck, tuck, tuck. New sounds are arising. When you stop the motor, are you stopping the last sound of the motor, or you have stopped new arising of the sounds? What do you think? Yes, new arising of the sounds, right? I think you got the point. So liberation means non-arising of the suffering that was supposed to arise. That's a liberation. Now tell me, after you stop the motor, you find the silence. Did silence started when you shut the motor, or was the silence already there? It was covered by the sounds. Silence was already there and it was covered by the sound. So Nibbana was already there. It was covered by our aggregates. And when you stop the new arising of aggregates, what is left is Nibbana. And I wish may all of you attain that state soon. That's the end of the talk. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Yeah, you can ask questions.
We could perhaps alternate questions here and online if you have a few minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for a very good talk, Bhante.
Sadhu, my pleasure.
Could you please just review for me the portion where you talk about the eradication of ignorance generating craving, generating karma. And I think you said the way to destroy the ignorance is with Vipassana and following the path. Could you just recap that for me, please?
What I said was, thank you for your question. I would like to know your name.
James.
James. Thank you, James, for your question. And the essence of the talk was, when the ignorance is present, craving is present, right? Latently, and it gives rise to new karma, and the past karma can get the opportunity to give a new rebirth. So when we do the practice at a certain moment, we develop vipassana, right? With samadhi, we can suppress these defilements. We suppress them. With vipassana, high vipassana wisdom, at a certain level, we start to lessen them, weaken the ignorance. When we reach the culmination, which we call the liberate moment of attainment, we completely cut this off, ignorance, because we develop wisdom. It's like ignorance is a darkness. You light the light, darkness is dispelled. When the wisdom arises, ignorance dispels. When no ignorance, craving cannot sustain. So when both are gone, past karma cannot get the opportunity to give a new rebirth, and new karma will not be generated. That's the point.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Venerable. There is a question from online,
Okay,
if you may. It is from Zehisa. It says, if I become free from being born again, what happens after I die if there is no self who is to be free? So I suppose it refers to your process description and if you have been liberated.
Right. I would like to thank you, Fraser.
Zehisa.
Sehiza, thank you for your question. I would like to recap the question a bit. If the question is asked, what happens to I after death? The question is not valid, because in order to happen for something to happen to you, first you have to exist in the first place. Right? This question was asked from the Buddha. Buddha was accused. You are destroying the living beings with Nibbana. Come on, monks. First of all, show me the living being first in order to destroy with Nibbana. It's just Nama and Rupa. Okay. Nama and Rupa exist. We consider it as a self, but still it's a suffering. It's a suffering. So what is the non-arising? With liberation, we get rid of suffering. Still there's a question, I understand, you feel. Who gets released from the suffering? No one gets released. Obviously, no one gets released. So in the ultimate sense, there is a generation of suffering which could have continued, it stops. If you term this as the self, conventionally, that same being is liberated conventionally. Conventionally, the same being suffered and same being attained. It's conventional saying. Because the name of being is not applicable to this life only. That being existed in the past and it will live for future as well. The suffering that is to come also belongs to that being conventionally. So if you say conventionally he was suffering, still there's no being. Conventionally he got freed from the suffering. This is the simple answer. In terms of ultimacy, there's no being. It's just a lineage of suffering that would have continued and it stops. And conventionally, if that lineage is termed as the being, the continuation would also have termed as the being, and the liberation from it would have been the same being. So we say being got the liberation. But still, it seems there is something there. What is the purpose of this? Right? I know this question is there. I ask a counter question. If there was a self full of suffering, agony, would Nibbana make sense? Yes, very good, thank you. Many would say yes. The self was full of bliss. If permanent, okay, just I'll give you one hint. If Siddhartha Gautama found a realm which is permanent, would he advocate Nibbana or that realm? Permanent realm, right? Mostly, right? Right? So there's no permanent realm, so he said Nibbana. But still, philosophically, one can ask, what is a permanent life? Would you still keep on enjoying a permanent life? Would you get bored with a permanent life? Or anyway, right? Right? Because infinitely you are living, right? Anyway, it's a philosophical point. Mostly we would, even I would prefer, okay, it's a permanent life, it's good. So anyway, if there is a self full of agony, Nibbana makes sense. I understand what you mean. Now I'm going to dissect this self. This is the self. This is the self. What is the suffering? It has pain. Pain is not self, right? Self experienced the pain, right? Pain, misperception, misunderstanding, wrong decisions, bad experiences, all are found. This is the suffering with the self. What the Buddha has said, the suffering is contained in the self. So destruction of such self inherited with suffering would be a bliss. Yes, it makes sense. What the Buddha has said, monks, there is no self, but the elements of suffering are present. Pain is there. Misperception is there. Misunderstanding is there. Wrong decisions are there. Suffering is there. The suffering is there without a self. So it's still suffering. No self, suffering is there. So we can explain suffering without a self. Then still you ask the question, if there's no self in this very life, if there was no self to experience the suffering in the future, still you ask the question, what is the purpose of Nibbana? It's still valid. The question is still valid. I know that. Then it's come to the practicality. Now we are in the question and the answer, both are in the same grounds. Okay, there's no self. You are saying, I'm saying there's no self in the present life, in the future as well. Okay. And what is the purpose of Nibbana? The practical question. So now there's no self here. Suffering is going to come. No self. What happens if I'm burnt alive now? Would I say, oh, it's no self, so let it be? No. I will surely struggle, right? That's the problem. If there's no self, we take it as a self. So therefore, in future lives also, even though there's no self, we will take it seriously as a self. Elements of suffering are present. Though it's not mine, the mind takes it at mine, makes it a big problem and suffers. So in the end, an enlightened being would say, you are suffering something that doesn't belong to you, conventionally using you, not ultimately using you, right? So what Buddhism is saying, this is why it's so delicate, and it is one of the only philosophies that I have encountered that is talking about this. It's non-selfness. Non-self. Non-selfness is also a created word in English. Non-selfness is non-self doctrine, but suffering is there. Though there is suffering without self, the nature of the consciousness it sees, it takes it as a self and it starts to struggle. Even though it's very obvious there's no self, the problem is still there. Even though there's no self in the coming lives, the problem will still come there. A person in the past life, for example, I would have thought, okay, no problem, where I will be born, there's no self, doesn't matter. That statement is not valid now. I'm suffering. That statement is not going to be valid in the future life. So the problem is, even though there's no self, I know ultimately there's no one who is liberated or no one is suffering. The problem is the consciousness takes it as a personal thing. So it has to be stopped. Otherwise, unnecessary suffering is continuing. The responsibility is with is upon the non-self consciousness, because it takes it as a self. I hope I answered the question. I know there are counter questions you can ask if you want.
It's amazing answer. Anyone else have a question from within? There is one.
Reverend sir, you mentioned that there were 30-something realms, right?
31.
31 realms,
Yes,
and
yes.
out of those 4 were apaya, or the lower.
Yeah.
And we are, as minis, probably we would be a good realm, right?
Yes, human, yes.
Human, as it would be a good realm. Now my question is, how can you explain that against increased population of the humans? Population is increasing, so does it mean that it comes from another realm to another realm?
Of
Is there a
course.
transfer?
Yes, that's the answer. That's the answer.
So all realms in total are one number, or one lot.
There's cycles. One cycle has 31 realms, and there are many such cycles, infinite number of such cycles. So infinite number of beings.
In any realm,
No. In the entire universe.
in the entire universe.
So beings could transfer as been death and birth, between even world cycles. One world system constitutes with 31 realms, another world cycle with 31 realms. A burn in a certain cycle can be born in another cycle.
Ah.
There's infinite number of world cycles. Human is just one realm, according to Buddhism.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
And the question can come, what is the problem with infinity? It is not a problem that can be solved. There are 4 possibilities, right, for the universe. Infinite time, infinite space. All maths breaks down. Probabilities break down. Infinite time, infinite space. Infinite space, finite time. The universe had a beginning, but is infinite. How could something come into origin as an infinite thing? Okay, it's a big problem. Finite space, infinite time. What is called finite space? What's beyond that space? Even with the Big Bang theory, one of the biggest problems is what would be the edge of the universe? How would it look like? Are you coming back to the end? Are you going to hit a wall? No answers for this. Finite space, because finite, infinite time, finite space. All the probabilities could occur in an infinite time, and the space has to end one day. All possibilities are possible. Finite time, finite space. That's what we talk in science today. What would have happened before the origin, and what is beyond the space? None of these questions can be answered to exact. So even some scientists today, some philosophers think the best option would be infinite time and infinite space. There are counter arguments for that, I know. For infinite space. If it is infinite space, there's a very nice argument. The sky has to be entirely white, because infinite number of stars emitting light, and then light doesn't disappear, and it has to come to this earth, and you will not be seeing such a sky. Yeah, arguments, disarguments, all are there. Infinite space, infinite time, all mathematics break, or probably you cannot guess the probability. Everything breaks down. So Buddhism is advocating infinite time, infinite space. So we have infinite number of beings. So what the Buddha has done in terms of ethics, have you thought about it? If it is infinite number of beings, infinite space, infinite time, no use of ethics. Purpose of ethics, ethical philosophers, is to increase the goodness of the world. If it is infinite, you have done nothing. And one can argue Buddha has done nothing. Yes, if you consider like that. Mathematically nothing. I give you a nice example, a simile. Thousands of millions of fish were drawn into the seashore. One man comes and throws fish back to the sea, one by one. Another one comes and says, "What are you doing? Doesn't make sense. How are you going to save all these fish? It's impossible." Yes, I know I cannot save all the fish, but I make sure the fish I throw will survive. Sorry? Yeah, he's going to be alive and he's going to survive. So Buddhas make sure, even though they cannot save all the infinite beings, at least some will be saved. Yes.
Bante, thank you for a very good talk. Just one question. You talk about fundamental consciousness. Is that, what is the Pali word for that?
Bhavanga.
Which sutra we can find out?
You can find it in Abhidhamma.
Oh, no, I'm asking sutra.
Sutra in the word of Vijnana.
Vijnana.
With the word vijnana, we refer to the bhavanga. You don't find the word bhavanga in sutras.
But no fundamental consciousness in sutra, right?
Yeah, the word vijnana we interpret as both fundamental and non-fundamental.
But consciousness always had those 6 senses. No
Sorry?
fundamental. Consciousness means 6 sense consciousness.
Yeah,
right?
the mano part,
Yeah, mano part.
right?
It's not a fundamental
So in Theravada tradition, we interpret as fundamental and non-fundamental both.
But it's mano vijnana. In part.
No, manoncha paticca dhammecha uppajjati mano vijnana, right?
Yeah.
Mana is different, mano vijnana is different, right?
Yes.
So mana
Yeah.
is
But
the
it
first.
is not the fundamental.
It is the fundamental according to us.
It means,
It's the bhavanga chitta.
but it is arising with the causes, right?
Yeah. Causes, yeah.
Yeah. It is also arises with the causes. There is no way it is like separate from causes, right?
No, fundamental consciousness is a causal thing.
Yeah.
It's arising due to causes. So I never said it's out of causes, right?
Correct. That's what I want to clarify.
Right.
Bhante. So fundamental consciousness means mano.
Yeah.
Mano. Is it
Mano
correct?
is fundamental, yes.
Yes. That's the Pali word, right?
Yes.
That's what you're referring in
Yes,
the English,
obviously, yes.
right? Yeah. That's what I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Manancha paticca dhammecha uppajjati mano vijnana, that's the fundamental consciousness. Yeah.
Venerable, would you still take some more
Yeah, I
questions?
would take questions, yeah. If they have questions, yeah. Okay, you can sit and ask. Please don't kneel. No need to kneel. Please sit and ask. No problem.
The mic, thank you.
Theravada Saranai Bhante.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the now series of events that Bhante described is ignorance, then craving,
Okay.
and then Chetana leading to karma,
Mhm.
then rebirth with different nama and rupa based on karma, either to suffer or to a blissful life that you can do good karma. So this is to break this cycle. So we need to practice anitya dukkha anatma.
We
and
need to
then
not practice understand anicca dukkha anatta.
Understand,
Yes,
okay.
exactly.
and to get rid of raga dvesha moha. That
Yeah.
is the vicious cycle of paticca samuppada. Is that the
Yeah. Paticca means the life of rebirth. Yeah.
So then only we can break the cycle of
Yeah, if you have to get rid of the causes, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Defilements, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because this is cause and effect.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Theravada
Yes.
Saranai.
I'm a bit surprised now. I was talking about cause and effect. Karma producing effect is a cause. Karma is the cause. Fundamental consciousness is the effect, right? So,
When you say in English fundamental consciousness, because
yeah, it's
Because-
conditioned.
Yeah, because when you say fundamental consciousness, somebody will think as something out of not the mano or mano vijnana, not from the source 6, because in sutras always only 6 consciousness they're talking about. So
Mhm.
when you say fundamental consciousness, because then we normally know eye consciousness and ear consciousness, all those.
How do you explain the consciousness while we are sleeping?
I don't know, Bhante. That's why I'm trying to understand. I'm just learning. So when you say fundamental consciousness,
So that's why Chakku Sota, we have 7 consciousnesses, not 6.
which sutra? That's why I asked which sutra I can refer.
Chakkus Vijnana, Sota Vijnana, Gana Vijnana, Juva Vijnana, Kaya Vijnana, Mano Vijnana,
Yes,
and Mana.
that's why I'm trying to understand which sutra I can read for that.
This is
one.
in many sutras, right? Manancha paticca dhammecha uppajjati mano vijnanam.
Yes.
Right?
In Satipatthana, you mean? In Satipatthana Sutra?
No.
In
What is it?
Vedanupassana or
No.
Chittanupassana?
No. These are in many sutras.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Chakkuncha paticca rupecha uppajjati chakku vijnanam.
I remember that one is in somewhere in Satipatthana Sutra.
No, not in Satipatthana.
Where can I get that one, Vishwante?
There's I
Sorry.
think more than 10-20 sutras.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
Sangyutta
read it.
Nikaya. Just go
okay.
to the Sangyutta Nikaya, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Bhante.
Chakkuncha paticca rupecha uppajjati chakku vijnanam. Tinnan sangati passo, passa paccaya vedana, vedana paccaya tanna, okay?
Yes.
Then sotancha paticca saddecha uppajjati sota vijnanam.
Yes.
Ganancha paticca gandhecha uppajjati gana vijnanam. Juhacha paticca rasecha uppajjati juha vijnanam. Kayancha paticca pottabbecha uppajjati kaya vijnanam. Manancha paticca dhammecha uppajjati mano vijnanam. So this mana is the fundamental consciousness. According to Theravada tradition, we call it savajjana bhavanga chitta. It's including the fundamental consciousness together with the adverting consciousness.
Yeah.
So chakkuncha, this cha, the word letter cha indicates chakku, the eye, and the adverting consciousness, and then the chakku vijnana.
This Bhavanga Chitta is also in sutras?
No, the word bhavanga you will not find.
Yeah.
It's found in the word with manu.
Okay. Thank you.
The word bhavanga is found in Abhidhamma, in the Patthana itself.
Thank you, Venerable. Would you take a question from online?
Okay.
It's a rather
This
personal question.
Okay.
And it is from someone who says they have been diagnosed with a rather serious condition, a terminal cancer. And how would you relate this experience in terms of self and non-self? That's the question asked about their terminal cancer being diagnosed.
Okay.
How would you help them relate it to their experience, or
Self
this
and-
experience to the self and non-self
Yes.
discussion?
I hope it's not personal, right? It's asking a question, right?
It is a question they are asking about themselves.
Okay. They are diagnosed by.
They
okay.
are, the person is diagnosed.
Okay. I'm really sorry to hear that, and I wish you a speedy recovery first of all. And in this sense, there's nothing to think in terms of a self, because there's no self, right? So what we have to consider is like, this is the nature of the rupa. That's according to Anatta Lakkana Sutta. That's why the Buddha has said, if rupa is a self, that would not lead to sickness, right? Rupang hidam bhikkhave attha abhavissa naidang rupang abadhaya sangvatteya. If rupa is a self, that would not lead to sickness. Yasmachako bhikkhave rupang anattha, as the rupa is not a self. Tasma rupang abhadaya sangvatteya. Therefore, rupa leads to, matter leads to sickness. So this is a fundamental reason why the Buddha has said all the 5 aggregates are non-self, because they lead to suffering. So therefore, under this thing, under this explanation, we have to understand that this indicates, this shows that the non-self doctrine is elaborated, right? So at that time, with the mind, we focus on it. We know about this cancer or any sickness. The rupa is one element. Consciousness is another element. We observe it, and they are 2 different elements. And sometimes we get distress, we get suffering, we feel unhappy, we feel sorrow. So these are all emotions arising with the consciousness and passing away. And also we have to understand that it can be caused by a karma, it can be caused by some other reason as well. We cannot just attribute everything to karma. And yeah, so what we are supposed to do is to understand the non-selfness of the life based on this. And also we have to keep it in mind, even though the one I'm speaking, I'm not being diagnosed with the cancer at the moment. Maybe I will not be diagnosed with the cancer in this life, or maybe I will be diagnosed in the future. But surely if I remain in the samsara, these kind of sicknesses are inevitable. So that's the nature of, and all of us would have surely experienced such suffering in the samsara. So therefore, this is not something that is common to you in this very life. It's something that all of us have experienced immeasurable times in the samsara according to Buddha's teachings. Buddha has said very clearly, if you see a man without hands, without legs, without ears, come into a conclusion. Nittame tangantabbang tumhepi amhepi evarupan dukkang pacchanabhutang. Make it come into a conclusion that we also have experienced such suffering in samsara, and try to get rid of that, preventing it from happening. Prevent the non-arising, prevent the arising of suffering again. So in order to do that, we have to get rid of the ignorance. So this can be a motivation for us not to have the suffering again. So always, that would be my advice. I wish him speedy recovery.
Thank you, Venerable. Both people who you responded to, they both put a thank you message on the chat for you. Should we conclude?
Yeah, okay. There's one gentleman wanted to ask a question, and 2 of them, we can give them both the last.
Thank you, Bhante. I was thinking of that when you, at the beginning, you said that scientifically we can't prove what Buddha said. So, regarding like latent, latent kilesas like that, how did Buddha recover? Is it Buddha found this? This is through his sarvajñata knowledge, or how we have to have the faith on Buddha and we have to believe all that? Because we can practically we know these things, but how did he go through this like scientifically to explain all this to the general people?
You would have been the best person to answer that, actually. Not me, obviously. Right? I can give it a try. Do we need to close the place or we do leave? 10 more minutes, okay. I'll make it a quick answer then, right? So it means at 9 we have to close, right? Okay, right. So I would rather say that I don't know how he understood this. I'm still pondering how he could do that in his own. Today, if I present this to a person who doesn't have any belief on karma or anything, the first thing I would approach is whether we present day. This is not what I don't think this is what the Buddha would have taught, but Buddha would agree, I suppose. I would come with the deterministic future. If we want to get rid of determinism, we want to have a free will. Only possibility is that we have to have a non-material element. I don't know whether you have thought about it. If everything is material, if everything is governed by material forces, laws of physics, unless you go to the quantum level, which is random, if it comes beyond the atomic level, everything is determined. It can be determined, predicted. And we are in a deterministic world if it has only matter. And it is a fact according to science. And if you want to get out of that, the only possibility is, which is a philosophically not very popular, unpopular, there has to be an immaterial thing. There has to be an immaterial thing which can make decisions, a causal agent, and which can influence this matter according to its decision and change the course of the matter. That's the only possible way that you can have a non-deterministic future which you can change. If you want to change the global warming, if you think we are heading towards the wrong direction, if you want to change that, if you have any glimpse of hope, implicitly you're talking about an immaterial element that can influence the matter. Otherwise it is impossible. Impossible. So there are two characteristics. This immaterial element, if this immaterial element is completely under the law of causality, still you fall into determinism. Doctrine of causality is just a doctrine of determinism. Everything, if every outcome is governed by cause, you cannot get out of it. There's only one way. Even you bring the non-conscious element into the topic, if that non-conscious element is completely governed by causes, you still fall into determinism, because materiality is governed by causality. If consciousness is also governed by causality, you cannot get out of determinism. The only way you can get out of determinism is this consciousness should be making decisions, and it should be able to make a decision against causality. Otherwise, you cannot break the causal chain. You may not agree with me with this. This is, according to philosophy, this is scrutinized to the bottom level. Unless you break the causality, you cannot get out of determinism. So according to Buddhism, everything is causality, condition, caused by conditions. Every consciousness is conditioned. including the fundamental. But that consciousness is able to make decisions, and those decisions are not completely under the influence of causes. You have a choice, very slight choice, according to Buddhism. Almost determined, but you have a slight choice. Only then you can get rid of the deterministic view. Okay, I just talked something else. The point I want to emphasize is there has to be an immaterial element that could take decisions. I'm not saying consciousness is not conditioned. I'm saying the decisions taken by the consciousness, if they are under the influence of causality 100%, you cannot get off determinism yet. Should be able to make a choice. Only then you can get rid of determinism. So the main elements of this consciousness, it should be able to make a decision, and it should be able to influence the matter according to the decision, so we can plan the future to some extent. Now, this opens the gate to us. Though it's utterly against physical laws, it breaks the causal closure. A scientist would laugh at me, but I would laugh at him that he's laughing according to determinism. You are determined to laugh at me, and I'm determined to say this. That's how I would laugh at him. Okay. So this quarrel will keep on going. Right? So I'll stop now. So thing is, maybe it's determined to talk. Right? So what is going on is the non-material thing can influence the matter. So we are talking about a non-material. We enter in. If you are talking about a non-deterministic future, which we all like, we have to enter into an immaterial realm. And that immaterial realm, how can you prove the non-immaterial realm? Immaterial realm is unscientific. It can be proven only through introspection, through subjective experience. You have to have experience. You have to see your mind with your own mind, which is subject to many doubts of many scientists. Can you rely on the introspection? Can you rely on the introspection? I'll give you another insight. You can doubt any introspecting object. You cannot doubt one thing. You cannot doubt doubt. If you doubt the fact you are doubting, forget about the discussion. You can doubt anything. You cannot doubt doubt. How do you come into the conclusion about doubt? Only through introspection. If you come to the conclusion about doubt through introspection, you can come into conclusion about all the emotions through introspection. So introspection is something that is reliable. So Buddha was introspecting. And this spiritual realm, with this spiritual, you can see your mind. With concentration, you can trace your mind to the past. And more the wisdom, it goes into this deep phenomena. Karma. Yes, that is the deeper. That is why he has to practice paramis for such a long period. And he had to understood this. I would like to extend this discussion, but I have to stop it now. So I would stop this attributing. That's the genius of this Buddha. Okay, we shall share merits with all the dead relatives and the deities. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang vo nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. With the deities, Akasattha cha bhummattha deva naga mahiddi punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha sasanang. Akasattha cha bhummattha deva naga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha desanang. Akasattha ca bhummattha devanaga mahiddika punyantang anumoditva chiran rakkantu sambuddha savakang chiran rakkantu tan sada. may this Dhamma talk, listening of Dhamma talk helps us to attain the final liberation. Idamme punya kammang asavakkaya vahang hotu. Idamme punya kammang asavakkaya vahang hotu. Idamme punya kammang asavakkaya vahang hotu. Sabba dukkha pamunjatu.